The smile on my dad's face was genuine when he raised his champagne glass. 12 years of dedication to Rivercrest Industries pulsed in my veins. I turned a failing regional manufacturer into an international powerhouse with an annual revenue of $50 million, and the big leadership change had finally arrived. To our family and the future of Rivercrest, my dad Roberto declared while looking across the conference room where our executive team was eagerly waiting. As the founder, there's nothing I'm prouder of than keeping our company in the Rocha family for another generation. Subscribe to the channel and give it a like to get access to more stories like this. My heart started racing. After so many years as Chief Operating Officer, implementing the automation system that revolutionized our production, expanding into international markets, and practically rebuilding the company my dad founded, this was my moment. It is with great joy that I announce our new CEO. Roberto paused dramatically, as if it would last an eternity. My son, Carlos Rocha. The world stopped. Carlos? My brother, 4 years younger, who hadn't even been with the company for 4 years. The same guy who had spent most of that time traveling as the brand ambassador while I was working 16-hour days on the factory floor. The same Carlos who still called me to understand how our own production system worked. Smiles and applause filled the room while I sat frozen, my professional smile locked on my face. Camila Torres, our CFO and my closest friend, squeezed my arm discreetly under the table. Thanks, Dad. It's an honor, Carlos said as he adjusted his Italian tie. I promise to take Rivercrest to even greater heights. During the following cocktail, I avoided any confrontations, keeping the small talk going. When everyone finally left, I walked over to my dad's office. Maria, I knew you'd come, he said without even looking up from his papers. 12 years, Dad. I dedicated my life to this company. I implemented the automation system that saved us from bankruptcy. I tripled our revenue. And you choose Carlos? He's my son. The man of the family. And what am I? Roberto sighed and finally looked at me. You're brilliant in operations, Maria. But Carlos has the charm a CEO needs. He knows how to entertain clients, make connections. You'll stay on as COO, where your talent is essential. My talent is only needed so he can seem competent, I replied with a calm I didn't feel. That's just how things work. The Rocha family has always had men in charge. You should be happy to still have a place? Like your employee? I left the office feeling the heavy weight of betrayal. In my own office, I opened my laptop and reviewed all the contracts and agreements I had signed over the years. That's when I noticed something I'd never considered important. The automation system I developed with my team was registered under my personal name before it was licensed to Rivercrest. My phone buzzed with a message from Camila, "Let's talk. Don't make any hasty decisions." We met at a cafe away from the office the next morning. Beatriz Ferreira, our software architect who led the technical development of the system, was there too. We checked the contracts, Camila said, handing over a folder. You still hold the intellectual property rights to the automation system. It was registered in your name because the company was in the middle of a financial restructuring at the time. What does that exactly mean? I asked. It means you have options, Beatriz replied. The license to Rivercrest can be revoked with a 30-day notice. I stared out the cafe window, watching the Rivercrest building in the distance. 12 years building someone else's dream. 12 years chasing approval that would never come. I'm thinking about starting my own company, I revealed. Something new, based on the system, but with improvements that Rivercrest never approved. Camila smiled. Have you picked a name? Phoenix Automation Systems, I answered without hesitation. Because we're going to rise from the ashes of this disappointment. That very afternoon, I drafted my resignation letter. When Andre, my assistant, came in with the mail, I asked, Andre, if I left Rivercrest to start my own company, would you come with me? He didn't hesitate. Wherever you go, I'm with you. The next day, I walked into my dad's office with the letter in hand. Carlos was there too, discussing the new decor for his CEO office. "I'm leaving," I announced as I placed the envelope on the table. "Effective immediately." "What?" "You can't just leave," my dad exclaimed, standing up abruptly. "We have projects underway, commitments with clients." Carlos remained seated, his face shifting between shock and a slight, satisfied smile. "I can and I will. I worked non-stop for this company while you swapped CEOs between father and son like it was some medieval monarchy." I placed another document on the table. "And this is formal notice that I'll be revoking the license to the automation system in 30 days. "What system?" asked Carlos, puzzled. "The system that keeps this company running," I replied, feeling a tinge of vindication at his incompetence. "The one I developed and registered in my name." My dad picked up the document, his face flushing as he read. "This is absurd. The system belongs to Rivercrest. Not according to the contracts you signed. Ask your lawyers." I left the office feeling a mix of freedom and terror. 3 hours later, my cell phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from Rivercrest's legal team. I ignored every single one. Within a week, I rented a modest space in the business district and started building Phoenix. Camila resigned from Rivercrest to become my CFO, bringing her impeccable financial expertise with her. Beatrice and her team of programmers followed the same path, eager to continue developing the system without the old management's restrictions. "We need a sales team," Camila remarked during our first strategic meeting in the new office. The walls were still bare, but enthusiasm filled the room. "Rivercrest's sales force is loyal to my father," I replied, worried. "Lucas Oliveira worked with him for 15 years. As if by irony, my phone rang at that exact moment. It was Lucas. "Maria, your brother just fired me," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "He said he needs fresh blood on the sales team. 15 years dedicated to Rivercrest and I was let go like an intern." "I'm sorry, Lucas. I heard you're starting something new. Is it true?" "It is. Phoenix Automation Systems. Need a VP of sales?" I smiled at Camila, who could hear the conversation. "Actually, we were just talking about that. With Lucas on board, we not only gained a talented sales executive but also his valuable relationships with clients." Within 2 weeks, our team had grown to 25 people, many of them coming from Rivercrest. Our first big opportunity came when Pedro Almeida, the CEO of Peterson Global, Rivercrest's biggest client, requested a meeting. "He wants to know what we're planning," Lucas explained after the call. "He's worried about Rivercrest's ability to maintain automation standards without you and the technical team." The presentation for Peterson was a make-or-break event for us. We worked day and night preparing not just a demonstration of how our system currently functioned, but also an enhanced version loaded with features I'd tried to implement at Rivercrest for years, always blocked by my dad as unnecessarily expensive. On the morning of the presentation, dressed formally with trembling hands, I stepped into the Peterson Global conference room, which looked intimidating with its executives lined up in impeccable suits. "Ms. Rocha," Pedro greeted me warmly, "I must say I was surprised by your departure from Rivercrest. Your brother assured us there would be no interruption in services, but you have doubts," I finished. "Naturally. The automation system you implemented revolutionized our logistics. We can't risk instability." I took a deep breath and began our presentation. "What I'm going to show you today isn't just a continuation of what we built for Rivercrest, it's its natural evolution." For the next 2 hours, Beatrice and I demonstrated how the Phoenix Advanced system would not only maintain current efficiency but also reduce operating costs by 22% with new demand forecasting algorithms and inventory optimization. "This is impressive," Pedro commented when we finished. "But I have to ask, will Rivercrest sue us if we switch to you? We still have a contract with them." That's when Helena Cardoso, the lawyer we hired, intervened elegantly. "Peterson Global contracted services based on a specific system. If Rivercrest can no longer provide that system, the contract has force majeure clauses that allow for a penalty-free transition." Pedro looked at his legal advisors, who confirmed with discreet nods. And what about the cost of transition? Shutting down our operations to implement a new system, even if it's similar. It won't be necessary, Beatrice explained, showing a diagram on the screen. We developed a migration protocol that allows for a gradual switch without interrupting operations. It's like swapping parts of an engine while it's still running. At the end of the meeting, Pedro walked us to the elevator. I'll send the contract tomorrow, he said simply. Great job, Maria. I always knew the real genius behind Rivercrest was you. When the elevator doors closed, I looked at my small team as tears finally streamed down my face. They weren't tears of sadness or vengeance, but of validation. For the first time, I wasn't operating in the shadow of the Rocha name. I was simply Maria, founder of Phoenix, winning my first big client on my own merits. News of the partnership with Peterson Global spread quickly in the market. Within the next 2 weeks, we received calls from 5 more Rivercrest clients worried about their automation system's continuity. Amid meetings and accelerated expansion, I barely had time to process my feelings about the situation with my family. Until a call from Andre interrupted a planning session. Mr. Carlos Rocha is in the lobby, he said, clearly uneasy. He insists on speaking with you. I found my brother pacing nervously in the lobby, his appearance noticeably less put together than usual. We need to talk, he said bluntly. I led him to my office, a modest space compared to the luxurious CEO office he once had at Rivercrest, but one I had decorated with care. Your office looks nice, he commented, looking around with a mix of admiration and resentment. What do you want, Carlos? Peterson cancelled our contract. Just like Martinez Logistics and Global Shipping. He ran his hand through his hair. We're losing important clients by the day. It was expected. You no longer have access to the system that originally attracted them. The alternative system we bought doesn't come close to what yours did. We're having serious production issues. I couldn't help but smile. You could have learned how the system worked over all these years instead of just attending business dinners. Look, I'm not here to fight, Carlos sighed, seeming genuinely exhausted. I'm here to propose a collaboration. Collaboration? I asked, surprised. Yeah. Rivercrest has the reputation, the infrastructure, the government contracts. Phoenix has the system and the technical team. We could partner up? I finished incredulously. After you all cast me aside? Carlos looked at his hands. Dad made a mistake. Not recognizing your contribution was unfair. I also made a mistake by taking on a role I clearly wasn't prepared for. That moment of vulnerability from Carlos caught me off guard. For years, I had imagined revenge, making my dad and brother beg for help. Now that it was happening, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. Are Rivercrest's numbers really that bad? I asked softly. Terrible. Revenue has dropped 40% in the last 3 months. At this rate, in 6 months, we'll have serious cash flow problems. I moved closer to the window, looking out at the city. Phoenix had grown exponentially in the same 3 months. We now had offices on 2 floors, 53 employees, and investment proposals from 2 major corporations interested in our technology. I'm not sure a partnership makes sense for us right now, I admitted honestly. Phoenix is growing in its own direction, not defined by Rivercrest or in opposition to it. Carlos nodded slowly. I understand. But think about it, together we could create something bigger than either of us alone. I'm not asking for family charity. I'm proposing a merger that makes business sense. I looked at my brother's face, the visible tension around his eyes, the less arrogant posture he once had. Part of me wanted him to suffer like I did, but another part recognized something new. Carlos was finally facing the reality of business without our dad's overprotectiveness. I can't give you an answer right away, I said after a moment. I need to talk to my partners. This isn't just my decision. Carlos nodded and got up. Fair enough. But don't take too long. Rivercrest is in a delicate situation. Did you tell Dad about this visit? My brother hesitated at the door. No. He still believes we can fix everything on our own. His stubbornness has only gotten worse since you left. After Carlos left, I was alone, staring out at the city. 3 months ago, I had left Rivercrest driven by pain and a need to prove my worth. Now, I was running a thriving company that was growing on its own merits, not as a reaction to my father's rejection. I gathered our leadership team at the end of that day: Camila, Beatriz, Lucas, and Helena. I shared Carlos's proposal and asked for their honest opinions. Financially, a merger could accelerate our expansion, Camila analyzed, always practical. Rivercrest has significant assets and government contracts that would take us years to secure on our own. Technically, it would be simpler to integrate our updated systems with their infrastructure than to rebuild everything from scratch, agreed Beatriz. Lucas seemed more skeptical. Rivercrest's corporate culture is toxic. I worked there long enough to know that. Phoenix has an entirely different environment, collaborative, innovative. And what about you, Maria? Helena asked. Could you work with your family again? The question hung in the air as I considered my feelings. I don't know. It's not just about business, obviously. We could structure the merger so that Phoenix's autonomy remains intact, Helena proposed. With you keeping operational control over the combined entity. If I come back, it has to be as CEO, I stated firmly. I won't accept anything less. And if your dad resists that condition? Camila questioned. Then there's no deal. Later that night, in my apartment, I reflected on my journey. Family photos seemed to belong to another life, happy moments before business complexities crept into our relationships. I picked one in particular, me at 16, helping my dad in Rivercrest's original workshop. His eyes sparkled with pride as I fixed a piece of equipment that no one else could repair. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was him. Maria, Roberto's voice sounded older, more tired than I remembered. Carlos told me about his visit. I thought he hadn't mentioned it to you. At first, he didn't. But when he came back defeated, I realized something had changed. I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. Rivercrest is suffering without you, he admitted with difficulty. Not just financially. The spirit of the company, it's gone. Dad, you made your decision. I chose to build something new instead of staying where I wasn't valued. And you built something impressive, he acknowledged. Your mother would be proud. The mention of my mother, who had passed away 15 years ago, caught me off guard. She always said I'd inherited my dad's stubborn determination, although none of us admitted it. What do you want? I asked directly. I want to discuss a possible union between our companies. On terms that work favorably for you. Including the CEO position? A long silence. Yes, he finally answered. If that's necessary. It's not about necessity, Dad. It's about recognition. It always was. We scheduled a formal meeting for the following week. In the days leading up to it, I worked with Helena to draft detailed terms for the potential merger. When the day arrived, I walked into the Rivercrest conference room, the same place where, just 3 months ago, my brother was announced as CEO. This time, I was leading a delegation from Phoenix, Camila, Beatriz, Lucas, Helena, and Andre. On the other side of the table, my dad and Carlos sat with their remaining executives and lawyers. The contrast was clear. Our team was energetic and confident, while theirs looked visibly worried. Thank you for joining us, my dad began formally. I believe we can all agree that a collaboration between Rivercrest and Phoenix would benefit both parties. That depends on the terms of the collaboration, I replied, keeping my tone professional. Helena distributed copies of our proposal. We've drafted a detailed agreement that envisions merging the companies under a new entity, Rivercrest Phoenix Automation. I watched my dad leaf through the document, his face hardening when he got to the governance section. It proposes that you take over as CEO and Carlos as Vice President of Public Relations, he said, looking up. And what about me? Chairman of the board, I replied. A consultative position, not an executive one. Carla spoke up before our dad could protest. It's a fair proposal, Dad. Maria has repeatedly proven her leadership. Phoenix is thriving while we face constant declines. The unexpected support from Carla surprised me. Perhaps these hard months had changed something in him too. My dad closed the folder slowly. I need time to consider this. I understand, I said. But you should know that we received an acquisition offer from Northeastern Technologies yesterday. They're interested in integrating our automation system with their global platform. The mention of our biggest competitor had the intended effect. My dad visibly paled. How much time do you need? I asked calmly. We can continue this conversation tomorrow, he replied, clearly shaken. When we stood up to leave, my dad asked to speak with me privately. The others left, leaving just the two of us in the conference room. You've built something remarkable, Maria, he said as he looked out the window at the industrial complex he had founded decades ago. In just 3 months, you've accomplished what many don't in years. I didn't do it alone. I have an extraordinary team. A team that chose you and followed you. He turned to face me. Your grandfather once told me when I took over his workshop, the real legacy isn't in the machines, but in the people who believe in you. I didn't fully understand that until now. I stayed silent, surprised by this rare vulnerability. When I named Carlos, it wasn't just because he was a man, as you might think, he continued. It was out of fear. Fear that you'd change Rivercrest so much it wouldn't be recognizable as the company I built. Change was necessary for survival, Dad. I know that now. He sighed deeply. Your proposal. I'll accept it, with one condition. What's that? That you promise not to completely discard the legacy we built. Some traditions are worth preserving, even as we innovate. I looked at the man I had admired and fought against for so long. In him, I recognized not just stubbornness but the same fear I had faced, the fear that our work would be forgotten, erased by time. I can do that, I replied honestly. I didn't build Phoenix to destroy Rivercrest, I built it to create something that truly reflected my vision. If we merge, we'll preserve the best of both. The next day, the documents were signed. Roberto Rocha, Carlos Rocha, and I jointly announced the formation of Rivercrest Phoenix Automation. The market responded positively, with our stock rising 12% in the first few hours after the announcement. In my new office, the same one that once belonged to my dad, I found a small box on the table. Inside was the very first tool he gave me when I started learning the business, along with a simple note, to remember where we came from, while we decide where we are headed. I smiled, placing the tool prominently on the shelf. My journey had started with the pain of rejection, evolved through the determination to prove my worth, and culminated not in vengeance but in something far more meaningful, the creation of my own identity that, ironically, ended up reuniting my family in a new configuration. Looking out the window at the employees of our now united companies, I realized that my real victory wasn't becoming CEO, it was discovering my own voice along the way. Phoenix wasn't just a reaction, it was the catalyst for a deeper transformation, both in business and in me. Maria? Andre appeared at the door. The team is waiting for the first integration meeting. I'm coming, I replied, tucking the tool away in my drawer. It was time to build something new, not defined by past hurts, but by the promise of the future, a future I finally had the power to shape on my own terms. Subscribe to the channel and give it a like to get access to more stories like this.